It started out like any road trip, really a few friends, some snacks, and miles of open highway ahead of us. We were driving through the middle of nowhere, one of those forgotten stretches of road where towns pop up every 100 miles like tiny oases of civilization. Our destination? A cabin in the mountains, tucked away for a weekend of isolation, booze, and dumb stories. But we never made it there. It was around dusk when things began to feel off. The sun was dipping below the horizon, casting long shadows over the desolate landscape, and the once blue sky faded into a strange, burnt orange. The GPS showed another 3 hours until we'd hit the next town. We'd lost cell signal about an hour back, and the radio had long since faded into static. Man, we should have filled up back at that last stop, Sam grumbled from the passenger seat, glancing nervously at the fuel gauge. The needle was sitting precariously close to E. We're fine, I said, trying to keep the mood light. There's got to be a gas station ahead. But as the miles ticked by, the road seemed to stretch on forever, twisting and turning through endless fields of dry grass and crumbling asphalt. There was no sign of life, no cars, no buildings, not even a damn bird in the sky. Just us, the road, and the occasional flicker of something I couldn't quite catch in the rearview mirror. Every time I glanced back, it was gone like a shadow that wasn't really there. "What the hell is going on?" Lucy asked from the back seat, her voice tinged with unease. "This road wasn't supposed to be this long, was it?" "No, it wasn't," Sam muttered, frowning as he checked his phone again, despite knowing there'd be no signal. We should have hit a town by now. I forced a laugh. "Relax. It's just some backcountry road. They all feel like they go on forever." But my own words felt hollow. The road wasn't just long, it was wrong. The longer we drove, the more the atmosphere seemed to change. The air inside the car felt heavy, stifling, and the light outside took on a sickly hue, almost like the sun was stuck in a state of perpetual sunset. The shadows on the road grew longer, too long for the time of day, and sometimes I could swear they moved on their own. That's when we saw it, the gas station. It appeared out of nowhere, a dilapidated structure with peeling paint and flickering neon lights. The sign simply read gas, but the letters buzzed and sputtered like they hadn't been maintained in decades. Finally, Sam exhaled in relief. "Let's fill up and get the hell out of here." I pulled into the lot, and the car rolled to a stop. As soon as the engine shut off, an eerie silence enveloped us. No wind, no insects, just a deafening stillness. I stepped out of the car and looked around. The station looked abandoned, rusted old pumps, cracked windows, and a sagging roof. There was no one around. "Are we sure this place is even open?" Lucy asked, peering through the grimy windows of the gas station's shop. "There's got to be someone here," I said, trying to stay optimistic. I tapped the pump, and miraculously, it beeped to life. "See? We're good." Sam stayed by the car while I filled up, glancing around like he was expecting something to jump out of the shadows. Lucy wandered toward the building, peeking inside. "Hey, come check this out," she called. "There's like old food in here, really old." Sam and I exchanged looks but followed her inside. The door creaked as we pushed it open, revealing a dusty, dimly lit interior. The shelves were lined with items, but everything looked ancient, faded boxes of cereal, dusty cans of soup, bottles of soda, with labels that hadn't been seen since the 80s. "What the hell?" Sam muttered, picking up a can of beans. "This stuff's been here for years." "Is anyone even working here?" Lucy asked, her voice low. I walked up to the counter, tapping the small bell. The ding echoed unnaturally loud in the silence. No one came. "We should just leave," I said, unease crawling up my spine. This place is creeping me out. As we turned to leave, we heard it a shuffle, like footsteps coming from the back of the store. "Who's there?" Sam called out, his voice shaky. Silence. Lucy's face paled. "Let's go." We hurried outside, only to find that the gas pump had stopped working. The car was still sitting there, half filled, and the lights in the station began to flicker ominously. "We need to get out of here," I said, my pulse racing as I yanked the pump out of the car and jumped back into the driver's seat. Sam and Lucy barely had time to slam the doors shut before I hit the gas. The tires squealed as we sped away from the station, back onto the road. But the road had changed. The trees, the barren fields, even the mountains in the distance were gone. The road stretched out before us, but now it was surrounded by thick, impenetrable fog. The headlights barely pierced through it, and the further we drove, the more suffocating the fog became. "This isn't right," Lucy whispered, her voice trembling. "This isn't the same road." "I know," I said, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter. My heart pounded in my chest, panic creeping in. The fog was swallowing everything, including us. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life, static at first, but then faint, distorted voices came through. "Turn back." "Ray." "What the hell?" Sam muttered, fiddling with the dial. The voices faded in and out, garbled and incomprehensible, but one message came through loud and clear. "You shouldn't have stopped." A cold sweat broke out on my skin as I glanced in the rearview mirror. In the distance, barely visible through the fog, I saw someone standing in the middle of the road, watching us. A dark figure, still as stone, its eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. I slammed on the gas, speeding faster down the endless stretch of road. The figure didn't move, but I could feel its gaze on us, even as it disappeared into the fog behind us. "What was that?" Lucy cried, her voice shaking. "I don't know," I yelled, panic taking over. "But we're getting out of here." We drove for what felt like hours, but the road never ended. The fog grew thicker, the air heavier, and the voices on the radio grew louder, more insistent. "Turn back. You can't escape." Suddenly the car jolted violently, the tires screeching as the steering wheel wrenched from my hands. We skidded to a stop, the car veering off the road and into a ditch. "Shit," Sam cursed. "We're stuck." We scrambled out of the car, the thick fog swirling around us. The road was gone, there was nothing but fog in every direction, an endless sea of gray. And then we heard it. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing through the fog. "They're coming," Lucy whispered, her eyes wide with terror. From the mist, figures began to emerge, dark, shadowy forms, their eyes glowing faintly in the murk. They moved slowly, deliberately, surrounding us. "No," I whispered, backing up against the car. "This can't be happening." The figures drew closer, their faces obscured by the fog, but their eyes burned with an unnatural light, cold and malevolent. They were the same as the one I had seen on the road, watching us. "You shouldn't have stopped," one of them hissed, its voice sending chills down my spine. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. The figures closed in, their eyes locking onto ours, and in that moment, I knew we were never getting off this road. The air grew colder, biting into our skin as the figures circled closer. Their movements were slow, deliberate, like they had all the time in the world to savor our terror. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat loud and frantic in the oppressive silence that surrounded us. "What do we do?" Sam whispered, his voice barely audible. He was backing up slowly, his eyes darting between the figures as they closed in. I don't know," I stammered, my mind racing for answers, but none came. We were trapped. The road had disappeared. We were somewhere else now, somewhere we didn't belong. Lucy's breathing was fast and shallow, panic written all over her face. "We have to do something. We can't just..." A loud crack echoed through the fog, silencing her. It was the sound of metal bending, groaning under pressure. We turned toward the car, and my stomach lurched. The figures, those shadowy things, were leaning against it, their hands pressing down on the roof, the hood, like they were testing its strength. One of them was crouched by the front tire, its long fingers wrapped around the rubber. It twisted effortlessly, bending the metal rim with a sickening screech. Sam cursed under his breath, grabbing my arm. "We have to run." "Where?" I asked, my voice rising in desperation. "There's nowhere to go. Look around." The fog was impenetrable, thick and suffocating. We couldn't see more than a few feet ahead of us, and the figures were everywhere, some closer, some further off, but all of them watching. "Waiting." "We can't stay here," Sam insisted, his grip tightening on my arm. "If we stay, they'll..." He didn't finish his sentence. He didn't need to. We all knew what would happen if we stayed. But the fog played tricks on us. The further we ran, the more disoriented we became. The landscape seemed to shift and twist around us, like the very ground was changing, warping. One moment we were running through open fry, the next we were stumbling over jagged rocks, our feet catching on uneven terrain. The fog closed in tighter, swallowing everything behind us, making it impossible to tell how far we had gone or if we had moved at all. And then I heard Lucy scream. I whipped around, my heart in my throat, only to see her drop out of sight, gone, as if she had been pulled into the ground itself. Sam and I skidded to a stop, panic gripping us as we rushed to where she had vanished. "Lucy," I shouted, dropping to my knees. There was a hole, a deep, jagged pit that hadn't been there moments ago. The edges were crumbling, loose soil and rock falling away into the darkness below. For a few agonizing seconds, there was nothing, just silence. And then, "I'm here," Lucy's voice called back, weak and shaky. I think I'm hurt." I fell its deep. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. We had no way of getting her out. The pit was too steep, too deep to climb out of easily. And worse, I could hear something, a faint sound like scratching coming from the darkness below. "If we're coming down," Sam said, his voice filled with determination. "Hold on, we'll find a way to." "No," Lucy cut him off, her voice sharp with fear. "No, don't come down here. There's something down here." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But I can hear it. It's moving. Oh God, it's coming closer." Sam looked at me, his face pale. "We can't just leave her down there." "We won't," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "We'll figure something out. We just need to." Suddenly, a loud thud came from the pit, followed by a scream, Lucy's scream, raw and filled with terror. I lunged forward, peering into the darkness, but I couldn't see her. All I could hear was her panic breathing, her voice barely audible as she whimpered. "It's here. It's..."